I'm Emma, and I'm just a year older than my brother Mike, but sometimes it felt like we lived in completely different worlds. While I was trying to figure out my place in life, Mike had been our family's pride and joy since before he could walk. I remember sitting at our kitchen table during countless family gatherings, watching everyone fawn over Mike's latest achievements. "Did you hear about Michael's new app?" my aunt would gush. "He's only 15, and he's already programming like a professional." My mom would beam with pride, while my dad would pat Mike on the back, saying things like, "This boy's going to make us all rich someday." And Mike? He'd just sit there with that confident smile of his, typing away on his laptop. He was always working on something new, some groundbreaking program or revolutionary app idea. I couldn't deny his talent. He'd been obsessed with computers since he could barely reach the keyboard. In middle school, while I was trying to figure out what clubs to join, he was already winning mathematical Olympiads. "Your brother's going to change the world," my dad would tell me, not even trying to hide the fact that he thought Mike was special in a way I could never be. And it wasn't just him, our entire extended family treated Mike like he was some kind of tech prodigy. They weren't entirely wrong. He did win almost every programming competition he entered, taking first or second place like it was nothing. Meanwhile, I sat in my room, sketching designs in my notebook and dreaming about becoming an interior designer. Not that anyone ever asked about my dreams. The family had bigger plans, all involving Mike's future success. My uncle had already started an education fund for him, and even our mom's cousin was putting money aside for his college. They saw it as an investment, convinced that Mike would become the next tech billionaire and take care of everyone who helped him along the way. "We need to make sure Michael gets into the best private college," my dad would say during family meetings, which were basically just sessions to plan Mike's future. "He's going to start his own business right after graduation, mark my words." I tried not to be bitter about it, but it was hard. Especially when I heard them discussing the thousands they were setting aside for Mike's education, while I sat there wondering if they'd even considered my future. Still, I held on to hope that maybe, when it came time to talk about my college plans, they'd show the same enthusiasm. It was a sunny morning in May, just a month before graduation. I'd spent weeks preparing for this conversation, collecting brochures from different colleges, calculating costs, and even preparing a small presentation about scholarship opportunities. My hands were shaking as I walked into the kitchen, where Mom was making coffee and Dad was reading something on his tablet. "Mom, Dad, can we talk about something important?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "It's about college. I've been looking at different programs. There's this really good design program at—" "Design?" Dad interrupted, his voice sharp. "What kind of career is that supposed to be?" I took a deep breath. "Interior design, Dad. I've actually been researching it a lot, and there are some really affordable options. Look, this college has great partial scholarships, and if I get one, you'd only need to pay." The sound of my parents' laughter cut through the air like a knife. Not the warm, loving kind of laughter I'd heard so many times when Mike showed them his latest programming achievement. This was different, cold, dismissive, almost cruel. "Oh, sweetie," Mom said, shaking her head, "we need to be realistic here. We've already allocated all our education funds for Michael's college." "But," my voice cracked, "I'm not asking for much. With the scholarship—" "Emma," Dad interrupted again, his tone now serious, "let's be honest here. You're not as smart or talented as your brother. We need to invest our money where it will actually make a difference." The words hit me like a physical blow. I felt tears welling up in my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. "I've been working really hard," I protested. "My grades are good, and I've been practicing design." "Design?" Dad scoffed. "You want us to waste money on that? If you want to learn how to paint walls and glue wallpaper, you can do that for free. You don't need college for that." The tears I'd been holding back started rolling down my cheeks. I left the kitchen without another word, but I could still hear them talking about how I needed to get my head out of the clouds and accept reality. Their voices followed me up the stairs, each word another crack in my heart. But as I sat in my room, staring at my tear-stained college brochures, something inside me hardened. If my parents wouldn't help me, maybe someone else would. I thought about my grandparents, Dad's parents, who had always shown genuine interest in my sketches whenever we visited them. That afternoon, I took the bus to their house. Grandma opened the door, took one look at my face, and pulled me into a hug. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" she asked, leading me to their cozy living room. Through tears and hiccups, I told her everything, about my dreams, the college programs, and my parents' reaction. She looked through my brochures, asked questions about the programs, and even flipped through the small portfolio I'd brought along. When I finished talking, Grandma squeezed my hand and said something I'll never forget: "Your dreams matter, Emma. They matter just as much as anyone else's." Then she got up, walked to their bedroom, and came back with a checkbook. "I'm going to help you go to college," she said firmly. "Your grandfather and I have some savings, and we can't think of a better way to use them than investing in your future." That fall, I packed my bags and moved to a small apartment in the neighboring city. The public college I'd enrolled in wasn't prestigious like the ones my parents had picked out for Mike, but it had a solid design program and teachers who actually cared about their students. The following year, I heard from Grandma that Mike had started at some fancy private college across the country. "Your parents threw this big going-away party for him," she told me during one of our weekly phone calls. Half the neighborhood was there. I hadn't spoken to my parents since the day I left. Every Sunday, though, Grandma would call and update me on the family news. It was always the same story: Mike this, Mike that. How he was getting top marks in all his classes, how he was already developing new apps and programs, how all the relatives couldn't stop talking about his amazing progress. While my parents were bragging about Mike's coding achievements, I was quietly building my own path. I volunteered my design services for local shelters, creating spaces that could make people feel at home even in difficult circumstances. Each project taught me something new, and slowly but surely, my portfolio grew. The nursing home project was particularly special to me. The facility had been depressing, all gray walls and fluorescent lighting. I spent weeks talking to the residents, learning about their needs and preferences. I wanted to create a space that would make them feel alive, not just warehoused. "You know what I miss most?" one elderly resident named Martha told me. "I miss my garden. The colors, the light." That conversation inspired me to design a space filled with natural light, indoor plants, and comfortable seating areas that encouraged socialization. I included memory walls where residents could display photos from their younger days, and created cozy reading nooks with adjustable lighting for aging eyes. When the project won first place in the Young Designers competition, I didn't have a single family member in the audience, except for my grandparents, who drove 2 hours to be there. "We always knew you had it in you," Grandpa whispered as he hugged me after the ceremony. Throughout my college years, I threw myself into every opportunity one could find. I designed spaces for domestic violence shelters that provided both security and dignity. I created child-friendly areas in homeless shelters that gave kids a sense of normalcy in chaos. By the time graduation rolled around, I had more than just a degree. I had a body of work that spoke for itself. Design firms took notice. Before I'd even thrown my cap in the air, I had multiple job offers on the table. I accepted a position with one of the largest design firms in the region, and suddenly I was making the kind of money my parents probably never thought I would. After a year of working at the design firm, I decided it was time to give back to the two people who had believed in me when no one else did. I drove to my grandparents' house one weekend, and as I walked through their familiar rooms, I saw them with new eyes. The wallpaper was peeling in corners, the kitchen cabinets were worn out, and the bathroom hadn't been updated since the 1970s. "Grandma," I said during dinner, "how would you feel about letting me renovate your house? You won't pay a cent, this is my gift to you. For everything you've done for me." It took some convincing, but they finally agreed. I spent weeks developing the perfect design, incorporating elements from their past while bringing the space into the present. I wanted to preserve the soul of their home while making it more comfortable and functional for them. The renovation took 3 months. I hired the best contractors I knew and supervised every detail. We replaced the ancient heating system, installed new windows, and completely redesigned the kitchen. I chose warm colors that reminded me of the cookies Grandma used to bake, and installed soft lighting that wouldn't strain their aging eyes. When it was finished, Grandma couldn't stop crying. The next day, she was on the phone nonstop, inviting everyone she knew to come see the house. I sat in the corner of the living room, watching as she led groups of her friends through each room. "My Emma did all this," she'd say, her voice full of pride. "She designed everything. Didn't I tell you she was talented?" It was the kind of pride I'd always wished to hear in my parents' voices. But while I was busy making my grandparents' dreams come true, my brother's dream was about to turn into a nightmare. The news came through Grandma, as usual. Mike had apparently hit it big. He'd developed some revolutionary app and sold it to a major tech company for millions. The family was ecstatic. Dad was giving interviews to local papers about his genius son, and relatives were already asking Mike for investment advice. But their celebration didn't last long. Just a few months after the sale, everything fell apart. Mike's former college classmate filed a lawsuit, claiming the app had been his idea, and he had proof. Detailed documentation showed that not only had the concept been his, but he'd written most of the crucial code as well. Mike had somehow gotten hold of it all and passed it off as his own work. The evidence was overwhelming. Emails, early drafts of the code, witnessed conversations, it all pointed to Mike's theft. The court case was brutal and quick. Not only did Mike have to return all the money from the sale, but he was also ordered to pay over $2 million in damages for intellectual property theft. The family went into panic mode. At first, relatives talked about pooling their resources to help him, just like they'd pooled their money for his education. But when they realized the full amount, reality hit hard. One by one, they backed away. Even his most devoted supporters couldn't justify risking their life savings to bail him out of this mess. I was in my office one Tuesday morning, reviewing designs for a new boutique hotel project, when my secretary buzzed in. "Ms. Thompson, your parents are here to see you." I nearly dropped my coffee. After years of silence, they'd actually tracked me down at my design studio. I'd opened it 6 months earlier, after building up enough clients and confidence to strike out on my own. "Send them in," I said, my stomach tightening into knots. They looked older than I remembered, more worn down. Mom's hair had gone completely gray, and Dad's confident swagger had been replaced by a slight stoop. They stood awkwardly in my office, taking in the awards on the walls and the large drafting table covered in blueprints. "Emma," Dad started, his voice lacking its usual authority, "you've done well for yourself." I waited silently. I knew they hadn't come to admire my success. "We need your help," Mom blurted out, wringing her hands. "It's about Michael." Dad cleared his throat. "My business, it's not doing well. I've been taking out loans to help with Michael's legal fees, but we're drowning here, Emma. We need money." "Let me get this straight," I said, leaning forward in my chair. "When I needed help with college tuition, you laughed at me. You said I wasn't worth investing in. You said I could learn to paint walls for free. And now you want me to hand over my hard-earned money to fix Michael's mistakes?" "That was different," Mom protested. "We were just trying to be realistic about your prospects." "No," I cut her off, "you were wrong about my prospects, and you were wrong about Michael's. I'm not giving you any money." They left my office in a huff, but that wasn't the end of it. The next day, my phone started buzzing with notifications. My parents had taken their grievances to social media, painting me as an ungrateful daughter who'd abandoned her family in their time of need. The family divided into camps. Aunt Sarah posted a long message about how children should always help their parents, no matter what. Uncle James agreed, saying family loyalty should trump past grievances. But others stood up for me. Cousin Rachel pointed out how my parents had ignored me for years while lavishing everything on Michael. My mother's sister wrote about how she'd watched them dismiss my dreams while building Michael's pedestal higher and higher. The debate raged on in comments and posts, with relatives taking sides and arguing about family obligations versus personal responsibility. Some called me heartless, others called me brave. Through it all, I kept working. I had 3 major projects in development, a team of designers to manage, and clients who counted on me. I didn't have time to engage in social media drama. Grandma called me one morning, her voice filled with that particular excitement she got when she was up to something. "Emma, dear, I need your professional opinion on something," she said. "My old friend has this apartment in one of those converted industrial buildings downtown. It hasn't been touched in nearly 50 years, and I thought maybe you'd like to take a look." I was intrigued. I'd never worked on a conversion project before, and the idea of transforming an old industrial space excited me. The next day, Grandma took me to see the apartment. The building was gorgeous, all exposed brick and tall windows. Inside the apartment, though, time had stood still. The wallpaper was straight out of the 1970s, the kitchen still had its original appliances, and the bathroom, well, let's just say avocado green wasn't my first choice for tiles. But I could see the potential. The ceiling heights were amazing, and those windows. The light streamed in through massive industrial panes, creating patterns on the worn wooden floors. My mind was already racing with possibilities. "This is incredible," I told Grandma, sketching quick ideas in my notebook. "The bones of this place are fantastic. I want to do this project for free. Consider it a thank you to your friend for letting me work on such an amazing space." I threw myself into the project with everything I had. I preserved the industrial character while creating a modern living space. We kept the exposed brick walls, but added warmth with wooden elements. The original factory windows were carefully restored, and I designed custom furniture that would complement the industrial aesthetic while providing comfort. The kitchen became a showpiece, with concrete countertops and sleek cabinets that respected the building's history. I transformed the ancient bathroom into a spa-like retreat, replacing that avocado green with clean lines and natural stone. When the renovation was complete, Grandma and Grandpa insisted on seeing it first. They walked through each room slowly, taking everything in. Then Grandma turned to me with tears in her eyes. "Emma, sweetheart, we have a confession to make," she said, reaching for Grandpa's hand. "This apartment, it's not my friend's, it's ours. Or rather, it was ours, our first home together. And now it's yours." I stood there, frozen. "What?" "We bought it when we first got married," Grandpa explained, his voice thick with emotion. "Back then, this whole area was industrial. Factories everywhere, workers coming and going. We were young and it was all we could afford. But we were happy here. When the factories closed down, everyone thought this area was finished," Grandma continued. "But look at it now, it's one of the most desirable neighborhoods in the city. We kept this place all these years, waiting for the right moment. And now it's yours, sweetheart. You've made it beautiful again." I burst into tears and threw my arms around them both. That evening, after they left, I sat in my new living room, still in disbelief. I took a photo of the transformed space and shared it on social media, along with the story of my grandparents' incredible gift. The peace I'd found in my new home didn't last long. Dad showed up at my door one evening, uninvited and agitated. "Do you have any idea how much this place is worth?" he demanded, pushing past me into the living room. "We could sell it and solve all our problems. Michael needs help with his debts, and I've got creditors breathing down my neck." I stood my ground. "This is my home, Dad, Grandma, and Grandpa gave it to me. It's not for sale." "Don't be selfish," he shouted, "this is prime real estate. Your brother is drowning in debt, and you're sitting here in a gold mine." Before I could respond, my phone rang. It was Grandma. Somehow, she'd known, grandmothers always know. "Put your father on the phone," she said firmly. I handed him the phone and watched his face change as she spoke. "Listen to me very carefully, I could hear her stern voice through the speaker. That apartment is Emma's. I gave it to her, and that's final. If you keep harassing her about this, you'll have me to deal with. Dad left that day, chastened by his mother's words. For a while, everything was quiet. Then, life dealt me the cruelest blow. Grandma passed away suddenly in her sleep. Before I could even begin to process that loss, Grandpa followed her just 2 weeks later. Everyone said he died of a broken heart. The will reading was held a week later. Everything was clear, the apartment was officially mine, while Dad inherited their old house. The difference in value was significant. The gentrification of my neighborhood had made my apartment worth several times more than their house. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. Less than 2 months after we buried my grandparents, I was served with legal papers. Dad was suing me, claiming I had manipulated Grandma into giving me the apartment. The lawsuit alleged that I had exercised undue influence over an elderly woman and fraudulently obtained property through deception. But throughout the renovation process, we'd had countless conversations over Messenger, her asking questions about the progress, sharing old stories about the apartment, discussing her plans to give it to me. Every message showed her clear intention, her excitement about giving me this gift, her sound mind and judgment. I had screenshots of her writing things like, "We've been planning this for years, sweetheart. Ever since you told us you wanted to study design, we knew this apartment would be perfect for you someday. And, your grandfather and I are so happy to see what you're doing with our first home. We always hoped it would stay in the family, and now it will, with the person who truly appreciates it." The day before the court was set to announce its decision, my phone rang. It was nearly midnight, and I was working late on a new project when I saw my father's number on the screen. "Emma," he said, his voice different from the angry tone he'd been using in court. He sounded defeated. "Let's make a deal." I waited, listening to his breathing on the other end of the line. "We can sell the apartment," he continued. "Split the money 50-50. You'll still get a good amount, and we can end this whole mess. What do you say?" I looked around my home, at the exposed brick walls that had witnessed my grandparents' young love, at the windows where they'd watched sunsets together, at all the little details I'd carefully designed to honor both the building's history and their memory. "No," I said firmly, "this isn't about money, Dad. It never was." "Don't be stupid," his conciliatory tone vanished. "You're just being stubborn now. Think about it, you could buy any apartment you want with your half." "I already have the apartment I want," I replied. "The one Grandma and Grandpa chose for me. And I'm keeping it." He hung up without another word. The next day, the judge ruled in my favor. My documentation was ironclad, not just the messages from Grandma, but also the official deed transfer, the will, and witnesses who testified about my grandparents' long-standing plan to give me the apartment. That was the last time I saw my family in person. I hear things, of course, our city isn't that big. Friends tell me that Michael still can't find work in the tech industry. His reputation is too damaged, and no one will trust him with their projects. The debt still hangs over him like a cloud. My parents had to sell Grandma and Grandpa's house first, the one they'd inherited. Then their own house followed. Now they live in a small apartment in the suburbs, all 3 of them together. Sometimes I drive past their new neighborhood and think about how different things could have been if they'd believed in both their children equally. They're still talking about me, spreading their version of events to anyone who'll listen. Ungrateful, they call me, greedy. They tell people I abandoned them in their time of need, that I chose an apartment over my family. But I know the truth. I didn't choose an apartment over family, I chose to honor the memory of the family members who actually believed in me. Every morning, when I wake up and see the sunlight streaming through those huge industrial windows, I think of Grandma and Grandpa. I think about how they saw something in me when no one else did, how they invested in my dreams instead of dismissing them. My design business is thriving now. I've expanded my studio, hired more designers, and we're working on projects all over the city. Last month, we won a major contract to redesign a historic hotel downtown, They specifically wanted someone who understood how to blend historical architecture with modern comfort.